non-state actors, all opportunists trying to take advantage of a situation. How does that project itself around the world? What does that mean to us as we look at the future of conflict? The character of conflict is changing. The operational environment in conflict is changing. But in my mind, the fundamental nature of war remains the same. And that's the struggle to influence key terrain populations and governance. That has not changed. So it's how we continue to understand that struggle within the new operational environment and context that we see it. The Army was created 237 years ago to defend this great nation, secure the interests of the United States abroad. And in my opinion, that imperative has not changed. So as I adapt the force for the future, the one thing I tell everyone is that we are starting from a position of strength. And why do I say that? Because in the Army specifically, we have the most combat-tested, combat-ready, combat-experienced force we have ever had. And what makes this different than the one that came out of Vietnam, for example, is this is an all-volunteer Army. In Vietnam, it was not. And a lot of that experience went back home. Today, we're going to sustain that experience. We're going to sustain those leaders. So in my mind, we start from a position of strength as we want to move to the future because of the experience, capability that we now have. And it's important that we leverage that as we move forward. As I look ahead, there's a couple things that I want. I want an Army that is capable of many missions, at many speeds, many sizes, under many different conditions, and the capability to operate in any environment. So I kind of put that as a start point as we look at what role we'll play in implementing the new DoD strategic guidance. And yes, the Army will always be there to fight and win its nation wars, but it's no longer enough. Whether it's fiscal constraints or whether it's the way the world is changing around us, as an Army, we have to be able to do much more. It's essential for us to help the geographic commanders in order for them to shape a complex and a dynamic, uncertain world. Conflict is ultimately a human endeavor, and the Army's strength is operating amongst populations. And at the nexus of many domains, including cyber, it's very important for us to understand the relationships between cyber and the human dimension and the land domain. And what does that mean for future conflict? And I think sometimes in our conversations, we don't really talk about that. And it's important for us to understand that as we move forward. I believe the Army's unique strategic capabilities are crucial as we move forward. We have to be able to provide a flexible mix, a tailored and scalable capability of armored, medium, light forces. We have to provide strategic depth and versatility to the joint force. We have to have global response forces capable of deploying anywhere in the world in 24 hours or less. We just recently completed the Joint Readiness Training Center at Fort Polk, and this week at the National Training Center, we have established what we believe we might look at in the future. And what is the future environments that our brigades, our divisions, our companies might face? It's a joint, intergovernmental, multinational environment. It has interagency participation. It's an environment that's one that might require some combined arms maneuver, but also has a touch of terrorism, criminality, opportunists. It's a complex battlefield that one minute might require some level of combat operations. The next minute might require leaders to adapt and understand the social economic conditions that they're operating in, and how do they integrate the interagency multinational actors in a very small area. And that's important for us. So we now have that. We're now training towards that. We're adjusting that as we go forward. And that'll be important in informing us in what is the type of Army we need, what are the capabilities we need, what are the modernization programs we need as we go forward. We also, in my mind, provide something that that the other services can, but we've had a lot of recent experience in it, and that is providing JTF-capable headquarters. And we have been able up to cores. We have completely now, over the last 10 or 12 years, deployed JTF cores as the center of JTFs. And what we want to do is build capabilities that allow us to have joint task forces capable of operating from the lowest level all the way up to core quality. that enables us to support the combatant commanders in achieving their goals, whether it be in shaping their environment, whether it be in preventing conflict, or whether it be actually executing conflict in some way. So it's incredibly important for us in that area. So there's some things that we're already doing. From up until this year, the Army has been built and organized over the last 5 or 6 or 7 years in order to respond to Iraq and Afghanistan. We went to the Army Force Generation process. We went to a process that was absolutely essential at the time to ensure our forces were ready, prepared in order to operate in Iraq and Afghanistan. We now need to look at how we're going to translate that to the future. And the first step is going to regionally aligned forces. So we're going to adjust this Army Force Generation model in order to train and then make available to combatant commanders regionally aligned forces, and that's all sizes. It can be from platoon up to brigade. It can be combat support, combat service support. And we're developing capabilities so we get better at building partner capacity, conducting joint exercises, multinational exercises. We have a brigade, the 162nd Brigade, which very few people know about, that's at Fort Polk, Louisiana. They were established several years ago to help us build and train our teams that are training both Iraq and Afghan forces. We're going to adjust that command once we get, as we start to come out of Afghanistan, to look worldwide on how we do building partner capacity. And they will be our training center for making sure we are training our individuals properly in order to be able to do this. Those are some of the subtle adjustments that we're making that will continue to move forward. This year, we're aligning the 2nd Brigade of 1st ID to AFRICOM. And the AFRICOM already has given them 96 missions over the next 12 months to execute, from platoon level all the way up to a higher level of exercise. That's the needs that are out there now, and that's how we'll continue to adjust as we go forward. I already talked about responsive tailbone scalable packages. We're also looking at soft conventional force interdependence. We've been working very closely with Special Operations Command in continuing to develop the relationships that we have had over the last 10 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. How does that project to the future? We're setting up an Office of Strategic Land Power. That will be the Special Operations Command, the Army, and the Marine Corps, to look at future conflict. What does it mean to ground forces? What are the characteristics and capabilities that we want? So just an example, for example, 1st Corps out of Fort Lewis, Washington, just returned from Afghanistan. They are now aligned with PACOM. And in fact, they're going to undergo a PACOM-sponsored JTF certification exercise this year. They're engaged in planning efforts with PACOM for war plan, security cooperation, bilateral, and multilateral exercises. They will provide options for security force assistance, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief in the Pacific Command's area of responsibility. So these are just some of the things we're doing. I wanted to just quickly throw those out so you have an understanding of where we're beginning to head. So in the end, I think we're going from an Army that was organized and trained over the last 10 years for Iraq and Afghanistan, one that's going to go to regionally aligned forces, and one in the future that I believe will go to mission-tailored forces. That will be tailored to specific missions in specific areas of the world, but also have the ability to sustain a campaign quality if it's needed, depending on where it might be. Again, I want to reiterate our goal is that we'll have an Army that provides capabilities for many missions, at many speeds, at many sizes, under many conditions, to operate in any one of the complex environments that we'll be able to go. I want to thanks again for allowing me to speak. I look forward to your questions. I'll just say one thing in closing. What I do know is that the nature of conflict as we go forward will continue to require presence in order to achieve decisive results. I reiterate that warfare will continue to be a human endeavor. You have to understand the human dimension of conflict, how it integrates with land, air, and sea, and cyber. And this will be essential to us as we implement the future security strategies of this nation. So with that, I'll end, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
It's wonderful to have professional logistics support when you need it. Thank you, sir. General, that was a very good and thorough tour of the challenges that you're facing there. And you look back over the last decade, and the Army really has had some remarkable achievements, both at the individual level and at every unit level, all the way from squad on up. And it's really been quite a remarkable run in many areas in which, in fact, we never knew we were going to have to use our Army to do, both missions and functions and operations. But some of that is not easily translated